Good morning. This is Dr. Robinson, Superintendent of Schools. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. We have several topics we would like to discuss. The first thing I want to make sure that you know, please mute so we try to avoid feedback. This session is being recorded so we can share with the general public. Please post any question that you have in the chat. Also, after each topic area, I will come back and give an opportunity if there are questions people have pertaining to that particular topic. And then at the end, if there's still outstanding questions, we'll try to address those questions as well. So the purpose of this, and certainly being virtual, we had to change the format somewhat. If we were in person, we'll be probably in a circle and having a face-to-face conversation, but being virtual is somewhat complicated to do so. We selected several topics that we thought were pressing or important or of interest to the larger school community, meaning parents, students, community members at large. And so we try to address those topics in a very succinct manner to keep you informed of what's going on within the school district. Dr. Elizabeth Wood, who's our deputy superintendent, she is helping to facilitate the process, as well as listening in case there are topic or areas that comes up that we need to follow up on as administrators. Also, I'm sure that there's several administrators on the line as well as several Board of Education members. So it's a tremendous opportunity for board members, for other administrators to hear the questions, thoughts, comments that might be coming from the community related to the respective topics. So again, I'm going to transition. This is certainly an opportunity. I look forward to getting some feedback from you. Again, if you don't have anything to say, don't feel compelled that you have to say anything. Honestly, we just want to make sure that you as a community member are aware of what's happening within the school system at large. So the topic areas that I'm going to go through this morning, the school budget vote and election, somewhat brief, year-end calendar, because there's some changes that we're in the process of looking at right now. Graduation guidelines is a hot topic for many individuals. School opening guidelines as we plan for September 2021. And also COVID vaccination, not only for students, but also the status of where we are as a system. So as I go through each one of those topic areas, I'll pause, come back, see if there are questions posed in the chat. Dr. Wood will let me know, or if there are comments that people would like to make, then we'll transition back to the next topic area and go through the 5 areas between now and 11 o'clock. So the first area I'd just like to bring to your attention is what's happening right now in the school budget. And yesterday, you should have received an SIS message if you're a parent with an attachment, a link, if you will, to the budget newsletter that will be going out to print and going out to distribution probably the first week in May. And that document is pretty comprehensive. It gives you a good sense of what the budget is about. Also, the 3 other referendums that's on the docket for election. So one thing I want to point out is that this year, the tax cap calculation, and some of you might be familiar, New York State, several years back, passed legislation that has a very complicated, if you will, formula that determines the levy, the amount of tax levy that the school district can assess, which then translate to the tax rate you pay as a taxpayer. And that tax cap calculation for us is 2%. So our tax levy increase will be at 2%. And that's the lowest tax cap calculation that we've had since the inception of that law back in 2012. And so while our budget itself will be at 3.03%, the tax levy impact will be at 2%. And just to kind of point out, you say, well, how can you be at taxes at 2, budget at 3? The difference is the additional foundation aid we received as a result of the recently passed state budget. And just want to pause there for a second because you'll be reading many things about many school districts in terms of how they're handling, or should I say how they're using additional funds. The tack that we're taking here, Shan, quite frank with you, is a lot different from a lot of places. We're taking the approach of looking at it from a very strategic, long view approach. In other words, we don't want to do something for next year's budget and don't have the capacity to do it the following year. And so you'll see places say, hey, we're going to use the money to to reduce taxes. Okay, you reduce tax for 1 year, but the next year you don't have those same dollars, and then the taxes go up double digits. So I think it's such a gross, unfair thing to the community to have huge spikes up and down in tax rates. And so one of the things that we have been doing and been doing now for over a decade here at Shenandoah is to try to have a very flatline approach to tax levy, very predictable approach. So people know that I paid this amount last year, and I can anticipate that's what I'm going to pay the following year. And that's exactly the case, because we're actually anticipating that the tax rate, the amount that you pay as a taxpayer, will actually just go down slightly. So it's going to be 0 to a slight reduction. And that's exactly our plan. So how do we continue to do so in terms of maintaining a pretty flatline tax rate, and at the same time provide some additional capacity within the budget to do some things? And this budget this year is somewhat unique because we have so many uncertainties still related to COVID that we're trying to unpack in terms of how do we really plan for September 2021, when in many cases there are a lot more questions than answers from the state and otherwise in terms of what's our capacity to move forward. So this budget preserved programs. We're not cutting any programs. And if you saw this past year, a lot of places cut a lot of staff. Shen did not. In fact, we bolstered our capacity, and we will continue to do so. We're looking at the possibility of ensuring that we can do some of the things that we were unable to do during the COVID period. What I mean by that, because of spacing and the need for 6 feet separation, social distancing classrooms, we had to use every other spaces, libraries, gymnasium, cafeterias, to provide for what I'm going to call traditional academic courses. And we also had to use some of those teachers, phys ed teachers, music teachers, librarians, AIS teachers, to also help facilitate, again, what I'm going to call traditional academic courses. And so as we plan for September 2021, this coming school year, we're hoping that as the state, and not only the state, but the federal government transition to a 3 feet social distancing limitation, that would allow us to have more students in classrooms, consequently free up spaces so we could get back to providing things such as physical education at the elementary level, or music and art at elementary level. And so those are the things that we're building some capacity on, because as we sit here, there's still a lot of uncertainties surrounding exactly what those regulations and requirements will be, because they're constantly changing. So as we're preparing a budget based upon the best information that we have today and some assumptions looking at how things evolved over the past year with COVID. So those are the capacity things that we want to make sure, because we don't want to have a situation that come September, we have the ability in terms of the legal flexibility to do certain things, but we don't have the budget capacity to do it. So we want to be able to be in a position to take advantage of whatever the restrictions or the regulations might be for September 21. So in a nutshell, that kind of gives you a flavor of the budget. I encourage you to take a look at the message that went out to parents yesterday, as well as going to the website. There is a dedicated page on the website that speaks to the school district budget that gives you a lot more detail. So my intent was not necessarily to give a budget presentation, because quite frankly with you, that would take up the entire time of our conversation today. But I just want to give you a good flavor, and so you have an appreciation of what we're trying to do as a system. We've been very strategic. We want to make sure that we continue to position the district in a place that we could continue to provide quality programs for our students. We continue to position the district in a place that the fiscal impact on taxpayers is negligible and remain flatlined, so it's very predictable for taxpayers who are like myself. I live here in the school community. That we all either think about how much we have to pay for taxes, and you plan that as a part of your budget sequence. So we want to make sure people can effectively do so year after year after year. And this budget absolutely does that. We also have on the docket vacancies for the Board of Education. And the Board of Education, I'm not saying this because I'm the superintendent of schools and I have such a tremendous reliance and a strong relationship. As I often say to Deanna Stevenson, who's our board president, we're partners in progress. We're partners in progress, and the Board of Education for Shenandoah has been a very, very extremely supportive board, extremely open to recommendations from the administration to expand opportunities for students. And so as we look at the 3 vacancies on the 7-member board, this is very important positions to fill. 3 of the 7 will be potentially new. And so we have Bob Presley, who's the most recently past president of the Board of Education. He's running for re-election, one of the 2 3-year seats. The second 2-year seat is Christina Rajat, who resigned due to some personal family matters from the Board of Education. She would have actually been running again if she was still on the board. And so her 3-year seat vacancy is open for election as well. And we have a 1-year term that's unfortunately is due to the passing of longtime board member, Mr. Gary DeLallo. And so that 1-year term is on the docket for election as well. And based upon the candidates submitted, I'm just going to look at the names here briefly. We have 9 individuals running for the Board of Education for the 3 seats. And these are the names, and my apology if I may mispronounce some of the names that are on the docket in order, in the way that they will be on the voting resolution. You have Jason DiGianni, who's one of the 2 members who were temporarily appointed to the board. You have Joseph Weber, who's the 2nd member who was temporarily appointed to the board. In order, by the way, I just want to make sure people understand, the names were actually selected from a hat. The names, they're not alphabetical, they're literally just selected randomly from a hat from our 2nd shift custodian in the building. So you're talking about the most objective person who doesn't live in the district, and just objective person to select the names from the hat so we can have a fair ordering of those names on the ballot. You have Megan Chapin, who's the 3rd person on the docket. You have Ram Lalakota, who's the 4th person on the docket. You have Alfred Ives, I-V-E-S, who's the 5th person on the docket. You have Stacy Flom, P-F-L-O-M-M, who's the 6th person on the docket. You have Robert Presley, who's the incumbent member on the board, who's the 7th person. You have Tom Templeton, who's the 8th person. And you have Kara Tubbs, who's the 9th person. So we have 9 people running for the 3 seats. And typically when we have a contested board election, it has a tendency to have more people come out to the election. The election will be in person at the Gowanus Middle School. Certainly, if people have concerns about COVID, you can request an absentee ballot. And again, just for ease of contact, you can contact my office and we'll relay you to the district clerk's office to ensure that you get an absentee ballot. But the voting will be in person. We'll ensure that all protocols are followed in terms of social distancing and things of that nature. So again, it will be a very safe environment. So I'm encouraging people to absolutely come out and vote on the election on May 18th. The third proposition on that is capital project. We have a capital project that's going up for a referendum, $26 million project, and just some quick highlights on that. We'll be doing things that we have to do, such as the athletic turf and track and field. By the time the construction start from this project will be about 2022, 2023. So yes, we'll ask the voters to act on it in May. However, we probably won't start construction for another 2 or 3 years after we go through all the approval process with the state education department, all the bidding process. So it's truly about 2-3 years after the approval of the project before we actually start construction. And at that time, those facilities will be 16 years old. So it's beyond their useful life. So we have to upgrade some of those facilities. In the middle school, a lot of focus on middle school and elementary school. In the middle school, we're going to look to upgrade some new classrooms. We're going to look to create for the first time a well-needed entrance to Gowanus Middle School, and where the entrance is now will be reconfigured. The middle school office will be relocated to that area. So as people enter into Gowanus Middle School, they actually enter in where the office is. So this is a major plus. And with that, we also gain an additional classroom. And gaining classroom space is absolutely critical for us because we're always bursting at the edge in terms of capacity. So we're pretty excited about that. At the elementary level, a major thing, and some people probably don't think it's a major thing, is actually having air conditioning capacity in elementary schools. Yes, we know we live in the Northeast, and yes, we know we had snow this past week in April, but the reality of it is we do have some brutally hot days in May and June. So we certainly want to do that. But more importantly, it expands the capacity for us to use those schools during the summer months for various programs that are right now largely housed at Orangen and Shattercon, because those are the two buildings right now with air conditioning capacity. So to be able to do more and more buildings is a major plus for us. As well, we'll be doing the typical asbestos work, the things that we have to do all the time, and some environmentally sound things such as power capacity to ensure that again we're taking advantage of new technologies surrounding power, new technologies surrounding LED bulbs, all those type things that we're trying to do, not only save money but also environmentally sound. So we're pretty excited about this project. It's not a lot of money, and when you think about a larger scheme of things, but it certainly provides a lot of benefits because we're trying to be very targeted in terms of how we use those resources. And the fourth one that's not here, just want to highlight, is in fact the transportation proposal. Every year we have a bid for buses. Just to give you some perspective, in a normal school year, and I say normal school year because this year, even though we have a lot of kids coming back, it's in a very staggered format. But in the typical school year, we would have 206 buses on the road every morning, picking up students. Over the course of the year, we go about 2.1, 2.2 million miles, a lot of traveling, folks. And so therefore, to have a process, a replacement plan is critical to ensure that our buses are up to standards all the time when they're on the road. So we have a very intentional replacement cycle. And so that replacement cycle is also on the docket for election. So those are some of the items that's there. I'm going to pause and come back to see if there are any questions that came from the chat related to the school budget vote and the election. Dr. Wood, do we have any questions in the chat?
Nothing in the chat yet.
Do we have any questions from anyone on the call right now related to that particular topic? We'd certainly be happy to address those. Okay. So again, there'll be time between each session as well as at the end as well. So don't feel as if you have to rush to jump in. Let me just transition back to the presentation again. So year-end calendar. This is a tricky year for us. As some of you may have read or heard, the Board of Regents did some interesting things related to Regents exams, and I just want to pause and explain that a little bit. So the New York State received federal funds, and in order to satisfy the requirements to receive certain dollars from the federal government, the New York State Education Department was compelled to ensure that some type of exit exams were still being offered in the core areas: ELA, math, social studies, and science. And so this year they watered down quite a bit the Regents exams that we're going to offer. If you recall last year, and rightfully so, they essentially canceled all the Regents exams last year, and they had to because honestly with COVID, when we transitioned, the entire school year went into a tailspin. And so this year with the cancellation of some of those Regents exams, it created a different dynamics in terms of how the end of the year will happen. And however, we still have a requirement to have students in school for those days if we're not taking exams. So right now, at this point, I don't have the absolute definitive answer for you, but I would tell you by May 1st, that's the timeline I have for myself. We will have the finalization in terms of what will be the final day, and this largely impacts students at the high school. What will be the final day for students at the high school to be in school, and also what we're going to do with some of those days that we may not, because the Regents exams are towards the end of the school year, the 20th, 21st, 22nd, that time frame in June. And so it creates a little dilemma for us because the students will stop, and not every student is taking the Regents exams. And how do we deal with some of those kind of things? And so we also want to look at some opportunities to use some of those days and times for some professional development possibilities with teachers. So those are the things that we're working through now. So it's not as straightforward as this is the last day for kids, and it's not as straightforward as that. So we're trying to make sure that we maximize, and that's a key word, we maximize the opportunities of time. Something that we have to do all the time to make sure that it's either professional development, it's either opportunities for students to come in and make up work to ensure that they pass a course, it's opportunities for teachers to engage in planning forward for September. So those are the kind of things that we're looking towards the year end. but certainly I would say by the first week of May, we're having some conclusion in terms of, again, what's the impact, particularly for our students in terms of the last day of school, because it's going to be pushed out a few days beyond what was on the original calendar. The second piece related to that then is also graduation. And we're working on graduation plans right now. In fact, this week, we had several meetings this week looking at various options for graduation. Last year, we had a wonderful ceremony, drive-through ceremony, but I got to tell you folks, as great as that ceremony was, it was a tremendous amount of work with a lot of people involved to make sure that that process worked very seamlessly. So we're looking at the possibilities based upon the current guidelines that we have now for graduation events. We met with folks from SPAC, and they have some very strict restrictions that they're dealing with. We're looking at the possibilities of potentially doing something here on campus. So we're working through those pieces. And so the point I'm making is that we will have a very high quality graduation ceremony for our students to recognize their tremendous achievement. 13 years is a long journey, and their academic achievement is certainly one that we want to recognize with the type of dignity that our students deserve, and also provide some capacity for parents to be in attendance, our guests to be in attendance. So we're working on those kind of things now. And I would say probably maybe the second week in May, we have more definitive details. I know Mr. Agustinoni will be sending out some correspondences if he hasn't already, probably as late as Monday or Tuesday of this coming week, just to let parents know that we're working on these type things, because that also comes with certain complication. It comes with a need for students to either be vaccinated, for students to have a positive test, and it depends on the test that you have. One could be 3 days. If it's a rapid test, it has to be 6 hours before graduation ceremony, and or having COVID 90 days prior to that piece of it. I mean, you've gone through the COVID, you're recovered from COVID. So there's also restrictions for that, for the students. And those same restrictions apply to guests. So I share those things with you because nothing is ever straightforward. And so what we're trying to do is plan as early as possible so that we can provide information to students, information to families, so they know what they need to do in preparation for the graduation ceremony. Because the last thing we want is a young person not being able to cross the stage because he or she didn't get vaccinated, he or she didn't pass the COVID test, he or she didn't have COVID in the last 90 days. So that's the piece that we want to make sure that people have information in their hands, and not interpretation, but information. And so we'll be sending out more information in the coming weeks. So again, families can prepare, think those things through, and we're working on a lot of logistics. We always have multiple plans, because if one plan doesn't pan through, we always want to have an alternative backup for those type things. So that's a big piece for us. A graduation plan is a big piece. Related to that, I know that the high school, and I don't have a lot of details on this, I know that the high school students are planning some different year-end things in lieu of, say, prom, because the problem that you have we have 800 students, for example, almost in the senior class, and that's not allowable in any venue to have 800 people. And so therefore, some of these events that we typically have at the year-end, we can't have the same way. So students and advisors, different people are trying to come up with some creative ideas to have some celebrations at the end of the year for our students. So the year-end piece right now is where a lot of planning, a lot of conversations are taking place. And in the coming week or weeks, more information will be provided to that. Related to that, to the year-end, the state of New York passed a law recognizing Juneteenth as a holiday, even though it goes into effect actually next June. A lot of places will be looking to recognize it this year. We'll be reviewing our school calendar, looking at snow days, looking at attendance days, because we still have the requirement for the 180 attendance days, regardless of how or when we started the school year. Those requirements are still there. And if people recall, the first 4 days of our school year was staffing. So our students did not actually start classes until September 14th. So we're kind of working backwards through the calendar, looking at those kind of things to making sure that what we can put in the calendar, we put in the calendar. So again, that May 1st is the time frame that I'm working from, because we have to work with different bargaining units, different unions, teachers union, support staff union, administrative unions, all these unions to make sure that we're not violating anyone's contractual rights as we make these decisions. So I kind of share that as a backdrop because you don't necessarily need to know all that, but I think it's important for you to have some context. As parents, as teachers, administrators, we'll have some decisions, we have some finalization, and we'll publicize and provide that information out there so everyone is on the same page at the same time. So again, let me pause and come back to see if there are any specific questions in the chat related to that.
Yes, Dr. Humphrey, I just want to clarify, at one point you indicated that students would need a test and any guests would need a test to be able to attend a ceremony, and it would be that they would need a negative test. So they need the negative test or the negative PCR, which is the 3-day test, or proof of vaccination or proof of being COVID positive in the last 90 days, which Mrs. Carmen, our COVID coordinator, if I've said anything wrong there, please correct me. And then in the chat, there is, I'm guessing, a parent of a senior who has indicated or asking the question about surveying parents, and then makes a statement about capacity is limited to 2 guests only. This is a family celebration, which the drive-through allowed for last year. Last year was very inclusive and ran very smoothly, according to that parent's perspective. Another parent, what would the capacity be at SPAC? Would tests be needed for the drive-through ceremony?
So at SPAC, the same guidelines we would have here. Test is required regardless of where you're going to have it. Drive-through obviously is different. I'm going to tell you, we won't be doing a drive-through ceremony this year. We will be doing an in-person ceremony, and it's either based upon if we have relaxation of the regulations and we could do more at SPAC. We met with SPAC representatives this week, and they also, because SPAC as an organization want to open up and start having concerts and things of that nature, so they definitely want to lobby to have greater capacity. And we're also looking at capacity on campus. And so right now, our goal is the potential of 4 guests for graduation ceremony, as well as live stream. The graduation ceremony will be live stream, similar to what we did this past year as well. So that's the plan. The question is, what's going to be the best venue based upon the current regulations that we have right now from the New York State Department of Health. And so we're working through those type things every day. And unfortunately, it seems like every day something else changes. And so we have a plan that we have to make the adjustments to adjust to whatever the regulations are. But I'm optimistic that we'll see more flexibility versus less flexibility in the coming weeks. In fact, I just heard last night, just watching on the news last night, that they're now moving the capacity potentially for big sports venues such as Yankee Stadium and things of that nature. And as those big sports venues get greater capacity, it quite frankly trickles down to schools, because you can't say you could have Yankee Stadium at 50% and we can't have graduation at 50%. So we're watching those things and seeing as those become much more flexible, we'll be looking to take advantage of those opportunities. And the more flexibility, the more opportunities for more people to be in attendance.
One more comment from a parent. Why is the drive-through ceremony not being considered?
To be honest with you, the drive-through ceremony was a tremendous amount of work, tremendous amount of logistics. And if we have the opportunity to have a very traditional graduation where graduates are seated, where we could go through the traditional programs, where student speakers can speak live and in person, that's the plan that we're looking to put into place. And again, ideally, to do so at SPAC will be the plan that we're looking to put into place to get to that point. Because last year, yes, the drive-through was great. It was exciting. And it was a tremendous piece. But there were so many aspects of the actual graduation ceremony that we did not do. And could not do as a result of the how things were structured. And so we certainly want to get back to doing some of the things that have traditionally made graduation what it is. So
that looks it for now.
All right, so let me just transition back. And again, there'll be opportunities at the end for people to ask questions. So the graduation guidelines, we just talking about graduation guidelines. Right now, it's a 500 cap, the testing, as I said, all these things we just spoke about, options at SPAC, options on campus, vaccination, and the testing piece. I just wanted to emphasize that the school district, we have rapid tests. And as some of you may know, we did a drive-through rapid testing at the transportation garage, and several hundred people were tested in short order. So we'll be looking to provide that opportunity for students for the purpose of graduation for those who are not vaccinated or satisfy some of those other criteria, potentially the morning of graduation, because there's a 6-hour window. So the logistics of that becomes important. So we're looking at that. And in terms of vaccination, we have been working very closely with Saratoga Department of Health, and Rebecca Carmen, who's as a school district has been designated as the COVID coordinator, has been facilitating a lot of those. And we are anticipating that this coming Wednesday here on campus, we will have a vaccination pod for senior students, or students 18 years, is it 16 years or older. And so we really going to want to try to target, quite frankly, some of our senior students. And so right now, I'm not sure exactly the number of vaccination we have, but I'm anticipating going to be anywhere from about 150 to 200. And so we'll be sending out information on Monday or related to a vaccination pod here on campus. And there'll be more of those, because we're working very closely with the Saratoga Public Health Department. And as they get vaccinations, they're coordinated through our school physician to try to do it here on campus to make it as convenient as possible for our students. And so when we get vaccination in hand, we'll coordinate these pods. And so we anticipate there will be a pod on this coming Wednesday. And again, it's only going to be dedicated or designated for Shen students. And so it's not one of those kind of things going to be open up to the whole county. It's going to be only for Shen, qualifying Shen students. And so that's an approach that we're also taking to address the availability of vaccination. And again, we have the rapid test kits that we could potentially use on the day of graduation or 6 hours prior to the event as well. So there's some options that we're trying to help to facilitate the process, regardless of where graduation might be. The second topic I wanted to transition to a little bit is school reopening. So a lot of conversation when the news, every news media outlet ran the story about schools can do 3 feet. That's not actually the case, because there are so many conditions attached to that in terms of how, under what conditions can 3 feet distancing occur. And so there's, as I often say, the devil's in the details. And unfortunately, when you hear the headline or read the headline, that's all you get in the headline. You're not getting the details. So we always have to unpack things a little bit to make sure that we understand the details. And also, there's rumors circulating around that this spring, Shen is going to move back to every kid's coming back to school this spring. No, that's not going to be the case at all. We're looking at the guidelines to see and how do we plan for September. And so right now, the plan is looking at 3 feet social distancing. The current regulations allow that to happen more so at the elementary level than at the secondary level. And so because of some quirkiness in terms of cohorts, so let me give a perfect example. Not all 9th grade kids take all the same classes in the same sequence. And so we can't have cohorts of 25 kids all follow each other around all the time, because it's a schedule driven thing. And certainly when you get 10, 12, kids take courses all over the place. And so in different sequences. So that notion doesn't work very well for high school. And so we're lobbying right now. I'm gonna say we regionally, school superintendents across the region. In fact, we're in the process of drafting a correspondence next week to go to the governor's office, to go to New York State Department of Health, New York State Education Department, for them to really look at the CDC guidelines, because that's what CDC made recommendations. They didn't make mandates. They didn't say thou shalt do this. They say here are some recommendations that states should consider when they're coming up with their protocols. And we're asking the state to go back and look at those protocols, to go back and look at the reality of COVID, not only across the state, but also regionally, and go back and look at the success rates that schools have had over the past year. And Shen is a prime example of that. We've had kids in school since September 14th. We have never shut down our schools because of COVID. We had quarantine situations, but we have never done a massive shutdown of schools because of a prevalence of COVID, which shows that students, for one, are following the protocol, staff following the protocol, parents are being supportive, and consequently, we need to take all those things into consideration as we look to September reopening. So we're really trying to make sure that those who are promulgating the guidelines are doing it in a smart way and not in a political way. And I'm not being disrespectful when I said it, but unfortunately, a lot of the decisions that's being made are made in what I call this political science mode, right? People use the word science, what a science is saying, but yet it's couched in a political frame. And we're trying to say, let's unpack that, separate that, whatever the politics might be, the politics, but the science is saying that we could do a lot more than we are allowed to do. So we're looking at those things as we look for September opening. As a worst case scenario, we're looking at 3 feet social distancing. As a best case scenario, we're looking at no stipulations. And that will that be September or will that be January? At some point, we hope that at some point in the school year next year, we'll be at a situation where we could be much more flexible in terms of how we provide programming and services to our students. And so those are some of the big uncertainties that we're planning for. And consequently, we have multiple plans. If this happened, then this. If this happened, then this. To make sure, again, we're prepared to provide our students with the best opportunity to learn in a very safe environment. So those are the kind of things that we're planning as we think about school reopening and looking at some of those guidelines. And we hope that the state is going to take heed and within the coming weeks, again, revisit some of the guidelines, because here's the irony. The guidelines that they just recently distributed are actually more restrictive than the guidelines that they had in place for when we opened this past September in the midst of COVID uncertainty, which I scratched my head about it, thinking, like, okay, we had guidelines when you had no idea what COVID was about that allowed us to open in September, and we have successfully opened until now, April. And now you put guidelines that's more restrictive than what we had before. Don't understand the logic and won't accept the logic, to be quite frank with you. And that's the reason why we're lobbying to saying, hold on, folks, let's look at the experiences that we've had and let's capitalize on the lessons learned and ensure that we are truly trying to ensure that our schools are open in ways that our students receive the best possible educational experience moving forward in a very safe environment. So that's the big thing that we're championing right now related to school opening. So let me pause again and come back to that in case there's some questions related to school opening or otherwise.
So Rebecca Carmen put in the chat, our COVID coordinator, that there are 90 vaccines available for this first pod that will be running at Shen. And I know communication has gone out or will be going out to families, and students who are 16 or older are eligible for that. And there will be a sign-up process. Is there, and a parent asked, is there a chance of doing away with COVID tests for big events? All adults are eligible for vaccination, true, and children are at minimal risk for COVID in general.
You know, so I think your question kind of speaks to if I don't know if you sense a lot of frustration in my voice, with when we look at the realities of the science, and the regulations are still not, I don't think, are caught up with that. We as a school district, we have to comply with the rules of the state, period. And I would love to, if Superintendent Shen had the authority to do certain things, we would absolutely do some things differently, without a doubt, period. However, we can't. We're dictated by the New York State Department of Health. The New York State Department of Health mandate that the New York State Education Department do certain things, and then subsequently we have to follow suit. So I'm hoping your question is a good one. As take for instance, right now, probably about 82, 83 roughly in that ballpark percent of all our employees across the board have been vaccinated. And we anticipate by the end of May, that number is going to be close to 90%. And to give you a perfect example of that. So while we have a large, significant number of our employees vaccinated, we still have to follow some of the same protocols. I'm hoping that when we have more adults, or the large number of adults vaccinated, the large number of students vaccinated, and to your point where younger kids, the impact of COVID is different, that all those things will be taken into consideration to allow for greater flexibility for events or school opening or otherwise. And so exactly, your question speaks exactly to what we're advocating to try to say to the state, to think about the realities, look at the experiences, look at the science, and try to do the things that are consistent with that. And so we're hoping that that's going to be the case. The big problem that we have when we look at it from the federal level, there are states right now that kids have not been in school at all since last March. There are school districts where they haven't had any contact with their kids since last March. And some of those places, by the way, are in New York State, where thousands of kids have not engaged in education for over a year. I think it's tragic. I think it's criminal, to be quite frank with you, and certainly unethical as educators. And so again, I hope you sense my frustration. I'm not angry about it, because at the end of the day, as Shan, we're going to try to do all we can to provide our students with the best opportunities. We're going to do all we can to provide our employees and position them in a place to be most successful. And that's why we're lobbying to try to have some sensible regulations come about because of some of the things, as you mentioned before. There's a huge push for vaccination. Fine. That's great. We need to vaccinate because we need to put COVID in the rearview mirror. So now let's take advantage of the fact that more and more people are vaccinated. So that's the big thing we're pushing. So week from week things change, and so I'm going to say to you as parents, I don't know what you do and who you're related to or who you're connected to, but use your voices. I think the community voice is something that unfortunately sometimes is silent with our legislators. Call up our legislators. Call up Jim Tedesco. Call up Mary Beth Walsh. Call up I forgot her name, just went through my mind. But call up our legislative folks and let them know that you as a parent, you as a community member, you want smart legislation, and force the people who are impacting the legislation to step up to the plate. We have had the Board of Education 2 weeks ago, I think it was. We had Zoom meetings with all our legislative leaders, having the same conversation, lobbying, petition with them to say, don't sit here and tell us what the government is doing. I hate when people want to point fingers at someone else and not take responsibility about what they're doing. What are you doing? You also voted to influence the decision too. We need your voice. So I'm sharing that very respectfully, that as a community, we're in it. We have a mantra now, Shen is in, we're in it together. And the we is the larger we, folks. So as parents, use your voices. Certainly you use your voice with me, and I appreciate it. And I hear you. That's why we do things like this. And we use this as momentum, as fuel, as energy to fight the fight, so to speak, with our legislative leaders, because I have to be an honest broker with you as parents. And when something could work, I'm going to tell you it could work. When something can't work, I'm going to tell you it can't work. And it's not about my preference, my personal desires. It's just some of those realities and the constraints that we have to deal with as we move forward. So again, I really appreciate that. And the vaccine thing is important. We want people to get vaccinated. We recognize that there are many concerns, and we're not going to force people to do anything. We're going to look at options to try to make sure, again, that we capitalize on all the possibilities that exist to open school, to have events, to do things that we know that our students need, our students deserve. And I'm just going to punctuate the need point. Our students need to be back in space. The psychological toll that COVID is having is tremendous. Studies after studies after studies are showing the toll of COVID on young people is tremendous. What we don't want is to have that be a long-term impact versus a short-term thing that kids will bridge the gap once they're back. And it's a challenge. Even the whole notion of someone sitting for 6-8 hours in front of a screen doing school, not healthy even on the eyes. So I share those kind of things with you because I know that people have different perspectives on virtual education versus in person. We have made, and our CVL teachers have done a remarkable job of trying to ensure that the virtual experience for kids is a high quality experience. And so my concern isn't that. My concern is all the other realities that comes with living and working in a virtual space. And so I share those kind of perspective with you as parents, because I think you really need to know and appreciate that when we look at these things, we're looking at it from a very human perspective, and not necessarily from a political perspective or process perspective, but a very human perspective in terms of what's good for people and what's the best situation that we could put them in. Any other question on that, Dr. Wynn? I'll transition to the last one.
No additional items in the chat. Carrie Warner was the name I think you were
Yes,
thinking.
yes. My apology, Woman Warner, that your name just quickly read through my mind. So the last one, and I kind of addressed this a little bit, the COVID vaccine status, and I'm just going to jump out of this for a second and kind of come back to the meat and stop sharing. The vaccination status, and as a school district, and again, I'm going to give a lot of kudos to Rebecca Carmen, who happened to be, you see her face right there on the screen, who's our COVID coordinator. She's a person that does all our contact tracing with the Department of Health folks to make sure that we are being astute in making decisions about when students should be kept quarantined or not. And even right now, trying to ensure that the rules in terms of if you're vaccinated, you're not quarantined, and keeping track of who's vaccinated, who's not vaccinated, all those kind of things become a major task for us when you think about the sheer number of people that we're dealing with, students and adults alike. And so we're looking at those things very carefully. We're working very closely with the county to make access easy for students and even adults. And so this first try next week is going to be our first on-campus pod. And I guess I was wishful thinking when I said 180. I guess I thought we got all the vaccinations from the county that they had, but I guess they only shared some with Shan. They had to share some other school districts across the county as well. But we certainly want to try to do more here on campus for the convenience of students, for the convenience of families, to make sure that we're taking advantage of those opportunities as we move forward. So those are the things that as you think about a system, yeah, all the everyday stuff's happening. At the end of the year, people are planning all the things that comes with the month of April, May, and June, which it's just seemed like one big blur. Everything just happened very quickly in the next couple of months here as we look to wrap up, which what I think has been an extraordinary school year. When you really think about this, this time last April, we were all sitting here scratching our heads thinking, okay, we know what we want to do, but we had no idea how we're going to do it best. But we were committed. We were committed this time last April that we're going to open school and we're going to provide our kids with a high quality education. Those were not negotiables. Those were, we're going to do that. The question then we started to decipher and unpack is how do we best do it? And here we sit. And I think we've had a remarkable school year so far, and we're planning for even much better September 2021. So let me pause there. If there are any comments, I'm certainly be more than happy to take them. I'm not sure if Mrs. Stevenson is on the call. If Mrs. Stevenson is on the call, I'll just ask her if she wants to just chime in for a minute as the board president to offer some sentiments as well. I think it's important for the community to also hear her voice. I probably caught off guard, but I appreciate you, Mrs. Stevens, for coming to the microphone, the proverbial microphone. So, Dan, if you want to offer any comments.
Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Robinson. I was actually just walking around. Dr. Robinson has said it, and we have talked about this several different times. Exactly what he says is what we mean, partners in progress. And we have been that way. We've been in lockstep since last April. I do remember sending him, when we went home in that March, it was about a week, I let it settle in. And I remember emailing him and saying, you know what? I know you're going to do this. I know we're going to do this together, but get these kids back to school in September. And that was the charge. And they all stood to the plate. Dr. Wood, the administrative staff, Becky Carmen, Dr. Robinson, everybody. And we made this happen. And it has been quite a hell of a year. It's been an extraordinary year. We've done remarkable things. And I stand in awe, and I continue to say that. But we have a lot more work to do. We got a budget together that is, every year I scratch my head. These things don't come by accident. They are difficult to put together. But between Kathy Chase and Dr. Robinson, his administrative team, they've done a phenomenal job once again. Lowest tax cap, and we met the mark. And for our taxpayers, it is a total win. We should be standing in ovation and clapping for them. So as a board member and my board colleagues, I know we stand together right now and whatever we need to do. But I will say there's a lot coming in the next couple of months as we talk about graduation. I want everybody to understand, me being a senior parent, I think it's important that we stay patient. We keep our eye on the prize. Things change in a day. So that is important to realize. Things change in a day. What may be 500 today, maybe 1,500 in June. Who knows? We have to wait and see. So I think it's important that we all have patience and exercise that at this point. Our sports, Dr. Robinson didn't even mention this yet. Our athletics is off and running for our final season of the year. Very excited. Our lacrosse teams are, I think softball hits, baseball hits. So we're all very excited to get going with that next week. Football and volleyball and the other fall 2 seasons are just wrapping up. So congratulations to those athletes. So thank you, Dr. Robinson, Dr. Wood, Becky Carmen, Kathy Chase, everybody. together, we're doing a phenomenal job. So thank you.
Appreciate that, Mrs. Stevenson. And also you reminded me too, one of the shifts that we made several weeks ago related to performing arts. Mr. Frank Roselli, who's our academic administrator for music, art, the whole kit and caboodle for our performing arts, moving from 12 feet to 6 feet has been a tremendous benefit for our students. So we can have more students engaged, particularly at the secondary level, with performing arts. And so we're looking at those things and taking advantage of everything from specialized masks for musicians and playing those kind of things. So we're taking advantage of all those things again to provide and expand opportunities for our students. And one of the things I want to say too, I mean, this is great that we have more people attend community conversation while we're virtual. I got to tell you though, I'm looking forward to the time where we could do the hybrid, where we will be in person and still give the virtual option to folks. And so typically this would be our last community conversation because we typically try to schedule them out. However, with so many uncertainties still on the docket, I'm putting out there now and stay tuned that we're probably going to schedule one some point, probably maybe end of May, beginning of June, to kind of give some closure, or should I say some conclusion to some of these big questions that we still have right now. So stay tuned, more information come out with that. And I'm hoping that one we will be able to do in a venue that people will come and have appropriate social distancing, of course, and still have the option of doing virtual for those individuals who want to tap in virtually as well, because the more people engage, the better. And if we use technology to extend that engagement opportunity, we would certainly do so. So we're looking forward to doing that. I just have to figure out what's the best venue. We have a lot of venues. Obviously, we have the entire school campus at our disposal on a Saturday morning. And so we're going to try to figure out how to best do that as well. So that'll be an additional community conversation one, but I think it's going to be a worthwhile one, because it's going to really punctuate some points, put a period in a lot of sentences, and eliminate a lot of question marks. So that's what we're looking to do. And we're looking to continue doing a great job on behalf of the students that we serve, and with the tremendous support of this community. I just want to share, I was on a call with some colleagues last night, and they called me the old guy because this is my 20th year in the superintendency, even though I'm not the old guy, by the way. And somebody's like, so what's the secret? And I was like, the secret is just to be straight with people. Be straight with your community. You know, let them understand where you are, where you're going, and why you're going that way. People don't necessarily have to agree, but they also need to know that you're always trying to do something that's positive and do it better than we did it before. We all have different perspectives, different viewpoints of how we do things, but what we're not going to do is something that's going to be worse than what we're doing, or something that's going to put our students at a disadvantage or detrimental. We're always going to try to add value to the equation in everything that we do. And so when we have debates and discussions and differences in opinion, I tell people that those things are fine, because in many cases that would drive another thought or idea that we probably didn't have before, thinking, okay, that's a good point. Because now it forced us to think about something else, or think about some things differently. So I share that very respectfully, because the engagement is important. The engagement is important. Your support as a community member is critical for us as a school district. And I know we may have different staff members on the call, and I think I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't end with this point. Thank you to all the folks who dedicate every day to serve our kids. And it doesn't matter what's the role that you play. Your role makes a difference for the life of a child every day. I say that as a father of 3 kids who went through our system, knowing that oftentimes the people who are most influential aren't the people who you think are. It's the person who every day says a nice thing to a child when he or she gets on the bus or walks into the school, or that person who builds a relationship with that child who, you know, that in their invisible backpack are carrying around different issues that we often don't see, because we see people's faces, but we don't see the burden that they're carrying. And for our children, we need to be able to see the burden that they're carrying and help them, support them along the way, and not judge them because of the burdens that unfortunately sometimes they have to carry on behalf of their lived circumstances. So I'll share that with you in a very respectful way. That's what we try to do as a system. Do we get it right all the time? No. But do we always try to get it right all the time? Absolutely. And we have no problem admitting when we didn't get it right, and work to remedy that wrong. So with that being said, if there are any final thoughts, comments, I'd be more than happy to address them. I see Kara has her hand raised. Absolutely, Kara, thank you.
I'm sorry. I hope you don't mind that I unmute. It's just easier than typing it.
No, no, not a problem. Not a problem at all. I'm glad you did.
I just first wanted to say thank you as a parent of a senior and of you have 4 of my children with you. I think Deanna hit it on the head with the patience. Like, we all wanted answers in July that you just couldn't provide for us. And just believing that we would get there, it didn't feel good, but it turned out perfect. It's the best case scenario. I teach in a different district, and things are not running quite as smoothly for me as a teacher as they are for my children. So thank you. Thank you also for saying that you're a little bit confused and frustrated with the guidelines as well. Sorry. I think all of us are feeling that. Like, this just doesn't make sense. You're telling me that my son can come to school every day without being tested, but he needs to be tested to attend his graduation. So those kinds of things, I think, frustrate everybody on a different level. And it's just nice to hear you, like you just said, shoot straight with us and be like, yeah, I get it. I'm with you guys too. I am a little disappointed in the no drive-through. I just heard it was amazing. And being the mom of a big family, if we go in person, it may mean that his siblings can't see him graduate. But back to what Deanna said, that's what we're saying now. It may not be what we're saying in June. So I guess what I'm asking is, and you probably can't answer it right now, I guess just to be considered, that for students who have larger families, my son is one of 4, so there's 6 of us in the house. If we could only get 4 tickets, somebody's not coming to graduation. We also have lots of families that are split. We have step parents. So there's 4 parents and no siblings coming. So I'm just wondering, if the guidelines don't change, is there a way to make some kind of possible accommodations or modifications for larger families? And I know that doesn't sound nice or right to a family that may be smaller. I get that. I'm just, like, my experience is that I'd have to leave one of his siblings home.
No, Kara, I can't see your last. Is Salvi the last name?
Yes, sir.
So Mrs. Salvi. So I appreciate you saying that, because those are some of the what I call pinch points in the whole process, right? That we have to take in consideration. And so yes, all those things are being considered as we factor capacity and try to maximize capacity for those factors. Absolutely. So yes. So I guess short answer is yes to that. And also thank you for bringing up that frustration piece. And that example is a perfect example of what we're talking about. I scratched my head thinking that, okay, I could have 1,000 kids in the high school on a daily basis, and you tell me that I can't do the same thing with the same protocols in an outdoor venue. I scratch my head. I really do scratch my head. And we're gonna so I don't have a lot of hair left, so I'm stop scratching and going to start scratching other people's hair to hopefully that they get the point that some of this stuff doesn't make sense. Logically, it doesn't make sense. If someone could show me the science that says this works here but it doesn't work there, okay, I'm a reasonable person, I can understand that, but that doesn't make sense. And so we'll be talking those conversations and trying to force people to say, tell me why this is not the case, because it doesn't make sense. So the patience piece, and we're working hard, and every week we're trying to unpack different things and pushing the envelope. So I really appreciate that as well. And Carol, you mentioned that you're educating another school district. We want all our educators, regardless of work, to use their voices to try to see if we get some of these legislation moving. NICET is a big voice, by the way. So try to the state organization. Use these big voices to try to bring some of these logical things to place. But unfortunately, sometimes I think the politics of some of these big organizations aren't necessarily aligned with the larger practicalities that you now, as a parent educator, have to deal with as well. So there's always the pinch points. I call them pinch points, right? Because there are things that we could work out that we have to deal with. But I really appreciate that, because I think you really punctuated the whole notion of what some of the frustrations are, because certain things seem logically, that's on the surface, it's not aligning, but we'll work through it. We always have, we always will. And come June, it's going to be a tremendous experience for our young people and their families. And come September, we're going to open with a lot of opportunities for our students to continue to thrive. So I'm convinced of that. I'm committed to that. And we're going to work to make that happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Robinson, Jamie Pitchforth has her hand up.
I just want to echo that. I feel I came here with like all these notes of things I wanted to share, and I just want to just applaud and say thank you for all you're doing. There's so much that doesn't make sense, so much craziness, and I feel like a lot of politics. And I just, after hearing you speak, I just feel like we're in really good hands, and I'm going to continue calling my representatives and just trying to make it make sense. I think it's rough that things are out of your hands and out of our hands, but we're all going to work together. And I'm so grateful for the year that we have had, that my oldest is in kindergarten and that he's been able to be in school at least this year.
And I appreciate it, Jamie. If I'm not mistaken, I think I saw you with a little one in your hand.
Yes, he's our fourth.
That's right. So that's the, look at that smile. Oh my God, unbelievable. See that right there, Jamie, right there is the motivation right there, that what we do today has to benefit him when his opportunity comes about. Right there speaks to exactly what we do. We don't do things just for today. We're always trying to preserve a positive future. So thank you, Jamie. I really appreciate it. And that little guy is, look at, oh my God, unbelievable. So thank you for that. So I appreciate it very much. Thank you. Dr. Wood, do we have any other comments in the chat?
Just a thank you from Mrs. Najarian, or no, yeah, Natara. I'm sorry. I really want to say the name properly.
It's Natarajan. Sorry, it's Natarajan.
Natarajan. Thank you, and thank you for sharing your name pronunciation, and thank you for your comment in the chat. Very, very much appreciated.
So again, I really appreciate it. You know, we were scheduled for 11 o'clock, but we don't have to stay to 11 because honestly, I'm sitting here right now, and my throbbing surgery knee is throbbing for ice pack. So I'm going to be selfish and say, as soon as I get off here, as soon as I get ice pack put on my knee. But I really want to say just thank you. Thank you to the entire Shen community. You know, every day I find myself more and more grateful to be in a position to make a positive difference for the lives of our young people, and for parents who send their children to us with blind faith every day that we're going to do what's in their best interest, to always strive to do so. That's my commitment as superintendent to you as members of the Shen community, and I appreciate the support and the patience and even the interrogation of our thinking at times to make sure that we are in fact always being honest brokers in our deliberations. And so I really appreciate that very much, and thank you for taking the time this morning joining us. These things are always worthwhile, and I'm looking forward to having one of these again, probably end of May, beginning of June, and having an in-person as well as a virtual option, so we could actually see, you know, and be in contact in space with people as well. So thank you. Enjoy your Saturday. Hopefully the weather gets a little bit warmer so we can do some things outside. But again, thank you very much. I appreciate you. Thank you.